Hi, we are back in Westport talking about land planning, and I know that if you've been following along, you would have heard us talk about how we came to using the amazing gift of this land, and we do not take the natural beauty that surrounds us and the stewardship of this place lightly. We have inspiration, and inspiration comes in different forms. And for Stephen Rolston of Land Ark Homes, he has been actively following other communities north of us, up to Blue Mountain, south down to Atlanta, Georgia area and Florida, east over to Hendrick Farm in Quebec, and west as far as Seabrook in Washington State. And I think today it'll be an opportunity for those of you who are anticipating what we're doing with the land that we continue to have and develop, and that is phase 3 of Watercolour Westport. We are going to be working on bringing forth new spaces for gathering, new spaces for walking and hiking and trails, and new homes and more new possibilities and new life to this community. And today, thank you, Stephen, again for taking time to share your passion, to share your wisdom, your knowledge, the opportunities that you've had to learn from others. And we're going to kind of go through a laundry list, and I have a list here in front of me, and I know you do too, holding your device there. Yeah, and talk about some of the communities that have inspired you. So let's go north. What is it about Blue Mountain that was one of those places that you said, this is special?
Well, at Windfall at Blue Mountain, it was incredible that I had been working with one of the architects involved with the community in Niagara-on-the-Lake called the Village Niagara. So if I can, I'm just going to segue to the Village Niagara.
Sure.
Because that community that I would walk every spring and fall, just something leapt in my heart. I always say I had no words, but I had feelings. And those feelings of something is just so different, and I couldn't articulate what it was. And eventually the founder of that community, through mutual friends John and Liz Hawley, introduced me to this idea of traditional neighborhood design, and this world famous land planner Andreas Duwani and his book The Smart Growth Manual. So that's what we're using to roll out Watercolour Westport in the future, is some of the ideas like preserving the stream corridors with a buffer of 50 feet on either side to make sure the water doesn't get polluted into the lake, because water is the basis of life.
Yes.
And a lot of people are concerned that we're going to, in some inadvertent way, be responsible for contributing to the polluting of the lake. And it's just the opposite. We're not going to put our storm water through these farmers' original irrigation ditches into a pipe and pave it. In fact, we're going to be preserving about 50 acres of the 220 acres of land. And we're going to be making it so that that 50-foot buffer, both sides of any existing natural drainage ditch, doesn't get piped and paved.
Okay.
And this idea of, as you'll hear about, daylighting the storm and preserving the natural vegetation. It's really at the crux of what we're doing. And a lot of that was founded by Andreas Duwani. So it's amazing how he was involved 20 plus years ago in the community, the Village in Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Interesting.
And by him just coming to town and explaining to people what land planning was like before the car. It was all pedestrian focused, because it was horse and buggy if you had to go far. But everything had to be within a 15-minute walk or bike ride in a compact neighborhood. And it was organic, and it was holistic, and it was sustainable, and it just evolved. And that's what we see being able to happen here, is we're not creating a town from scratch like most of these communities that I'm going to explain about. Instead, we have this 200-year-old organic, holistic, sustainable community where, by developing homes that can support the businesses so that they're not just summer cottage life summer towns, but they have sustainability in the off season and the winter with a few hundred homes coming to life. It will just bring, well, new homes, new life, and new possibilities.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really excited to talk about what what got me back into home building was that community in Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Okay.
Because it had all these little pocket parks and all these walking trails, and everything was different. So Windfall, up in Blue Mountain,
Yes.
was the community that, after working with one of the architects in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and we had a little disagreement over front loading or rear loading garages, if you can imagine. But there's 140 different things that in that little book, a picture and a caption and a paragraph, there's 140 things a land developer can do.
Interesting.
And so we parted ways with that architect, wonderful as he is, over that issue. Because in reconnecting with a lot of my consultants and friends, engineering and land planning, they're like, that will work in Niagara-on-the-Lake. They don't have as much snow. Up
Right.
here, you can only have one laneway for now. Maybe eventually we can think of that, but it's just not as familiar as front-loading laneways. So, and then I opened the Toronto Star that weekend, and because I always buy the Toronto Star, I love the Globe and Mail. I continue to this day to read those as points of reference for housing across the world, but particularly the GTA and Canada. And so there was on page 3 probably of the Toronto Star, a beautiful ad for these beautiful brightly colored homes like Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Yes.
So I investigated Windfall, and if there's one thing that we're going to talk about on each of these
Yes,
dozen
come on,
places,
let's go.
the one thing is perimeter trails.
Okay.
So on their land plan of 148 acres, they had a perimeter trail, and I thought,
So people can hope to expect to see a perimeter trail and trails integrated into the neighborhood.
exactly.
Okay.
So it's not rocket science, a lot of these things. It's just one simple idea is what we're trying to shout out each of these communities.
Amazing. Okay, let's go east. Hendrick Farm. I know I've been there myself, and it is beautiful. It has some beautiful elements, but it still isn't watercolor. What did you take from there?
The beauty and the awe and the wonder of the different types of historic architecture.
Okay.
Because that's what's consistent with Niagara-on-the-Lake. If you look at The Village Niagara and you load their 4-minute video on their landing page, it's just a collage of different architectural types and styles throughout history. And whereas that was very intentional by Andreas Dwani and John Hawley and Liz, Hendrick Farm, Sean McAdam, I believe his name is, wonderful developer, and he just had Andreas Dwani come up and do a land plan that was consistent with Old Chelsea. And he tried to maintain New England style architecture.
Yes.
And that 1800-ish, 1600, 1700, 1800.
Salt box style facades. Yeah.
And it's so beautiful, and it's so tastefully and wonderfully done. So many things I could talk about.
Yeah.
But color, and variety and pastel. So I just love Hendrick Farm.
Yeah. I think one thing, if I can say, that we went together, or I went, and I know you inspired me to go, and I've been now a few times, is the outdoor activity spaces too that are integrated into that community, that are naturally fitted in. It's not a bright yellow play structure in a park with a fence around it. It's open space that is accessible to the whole community.
And Sean
And more
McAdams,
organic, I guess, in its appearance.
Oh, it is. And I love what he says about doing his land plan. Homes that rest easily upon the land. Because I'm not in competition with any of these communities we're talking about. We think it's all about collaboration and cross-pollination, and celebrate the variety of differences.
Absolutely.
And so the way it's integrated into the land, that's what we envision happening here with our land planner, Mark Snyder, this winter, giving us all our walking trails, that all of the hedgerows that we'll now start preserving outside the village boundary, and that's where the perimeter walking trail will be, is outside the village boundary. And so we have 100 acres inside the village, we have 120 outside the village, and it's just amazing what Hendrick Farm has done with a natural playground.
Yes.
So you use wood structures, you use cedar logs, and kids play infinitely longer when they're not getting burned or freezing. Either hot sun or freezing cold.
Yeah.
They play many times, as we've learned from various landscape manufacturers who are building natural play structures.
Amazing. Okay, let's go south. I'm thinking about Trilith. I'm thinking about Serenby. I'm thinking about, you can name them better than I can.
And I call them the 3 S's.
Okay.
And that's why we put them in order on our website. So Seaside is the one that we spoke when we were chatting with Dave Brown. He had been there. And Seaside, we could talk a lot about Seaside because it's what's founded this movement. So it's amazing how many people I'm bumping into.
That's in Florida. You've gone a little further south than Atlanta.
True.
But that's okay. Go there.
Sorry, Seaside, Florida. Yes. Seaside, Florida. It's the community that started this all 40 years ago. And it was a community in the middle of nowhere that when other developers saw the success of it, they emulated it all around that portion of the Florida coastline. So Alice Beach, Rosemary Beach, Seaside, Florida, they're all in close proximity. And it's an incredible place that I hope to go to. I have not yet been there. But everybody I know who is a land planner or interested in land planning, they talk about those 3 with such awe. But I have been to Serenbe. And Serenbe in Atlanta, Steve Nygren, the founder of that amazing community, was gracious and had lunch with me and dinner with me and our crew about 2 years ago. And he explained to me this concept of daylighting the storm. Because if you pipe and pave the storm drain, then you're eliminating all the natural contours. And that's our whole goal.
Now I know what you're saying with that statement, daylighting the storm. So when a storm comes, the daylight can actually hit where the water is running.
Correct, and it can percolate in those 50 acres, in our case, into the soil and not cause any, damage to the lakes. Because the biggest thing we're trying to do is, in association with the Upper Rideau Lake Association, the Rideau Valley Conservation Association, and the Village of Westport, we're trying to preserve the water quality of these lakes and enhance it, not hinder it in any way, shape, or form. So most developers, when they're going for 30 units of housing per acre in places like Ottawa and Toronto, in a 100-acre field, they would take the original farmer's drainage ditch and they would pipe it and they would pave it. Whereas daylighting the storm is only possible when you're in a rural environment, a small village. And we think there's 1,000 rural villages across Canada that we want to be the exemplar for from what we've learned. And this idea of daylighting the storm, you take the natural contours and you enhance, you don't hinder the work of those areas, a 50-foot buffer both sides of just a farmer's drainage ditch. You could pipe it, you could pave it, but it wouldn't be working with nature. It wouldn't be working with the organic vegetation that's evolved over the last 100 years.
Okay, interesting. So do you think that so I'm going to stick on this topic just for one extra minute to ask you, when you think of storm events that are happening in our communities, the impacts of those?
Flooding is horrible, as is recently the case in Texas. And we do not wish that on anyone. No. But certainly it's much more advantageous for us to build up the native soil that's here, the glacial till, and make it so that those existing storm drains that are there that maybe flood the banks a few feet in the case of where it's a little hillier, or maybe 10 or 20 feet. We've been monitoring with our hydrologist and with our civil engineering team what is the case, and it's much more the case that these 100-year storm events obviously are becoming much more common. So that's something that we are taking into account, is making sure that this place, good environmental stewardship, starts with building homes that are meant to last 400 years, because you're either building a zero home or an obsolete home. And that's a big idea for people, zero versus obsolete. We know that a lot of people are going to invest $1 million, $2, $5, $10 million in an obsolete home. And what we're talking about today is making sure that the land plan is not an obsolete land plan.
Awesome.
Because what John Hawley taught me in Niagara-on-the-Lake is, I thought I grew up in a traditional neighborhood community, and I did, but it was a post-World War II community where you're separated from where you live, you're separated from where you work. Yeah. And then I had, an hour commute. And
spend a lifetime commuting between the two.
Whereas this, a walkable land plan, means that it's a pre-World War I or even pre-car era, 1800s up to 1908 or whenever you want to talk about the car's evolution, impacting land planning. So the Garden City movement talked about having these gardens in everybody's backyard and preserving places like the stream corridors and the parks, so that it was just a Garden of Eden utopian-like experience for people growing up.
So in phase 3, will there be more homes that are, or how will you be allocating the green space? I mean, that's a contentious issue when it comes to builders and land planning and what to do with that premium property.
It is, and just great environmental stewardship, as Mark has taught me and many others of the people we're referencing. It means about making public the best views, making public the best water stream corridors, and not making them private amenities, but making them public amenities to be enjoyed not just by watercolor residents, but by visitors to our Discovery Trail. So that when they park and they walk through some of these eventually 12.7 kilometers of walking trail, they'll be able to connect with nature and neighbor and learn about the different flora and fauna that are native to this area.
Interesting.
Just like a national park.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, tell me more about New Amherst and Southland.
Yes.
Southland is in BC, New Amherst is in Cobourg, so we're going a little bit west, but not that much.
And through
until we get to BC.
One of the Canadian architects involved with the village, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Andrew Marchenko, brilliant man. He connected me to Max Lemarchand, the founder, or one of the founders of New Amherst. And I had been there many times and saw how they did this idea of daylighting the storm, but I didn't have vocabulary, I didn't have the concept, and I wondered why that was the case. It was only years later that I learned about it when visiting Serenbe and listening to the Serenbe Stories podcasts and getting to know Steve Nygren and his work. But Max Lemarchand had been doing it right there in Cobourg. And again, same idea of Andreas Duany, of a variety of architectural forms, a variety of color, a walkable land plan, pocket parks, stream corridors protected, nature trails. And Max Lemarchand is the brilliant mastermind, or one of them at least, as far as I know, behind making that community come to life. And I think it was about 1,000 homes, and maybe when I met him 4 or 5 years ago, he was maybe halfway through his brilliant community.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about Carlton Landing in Oklahoma. And
you asked me, I'll just go back to Southlands.
Oh yes,
Sorry,
Southlands.
I didn't answer that part of the question. Right. So Southlands is in Tsawwassen, BC.
Okay.
And Tsawwassen is where the ferry goes to go over to Vancouver Island. And so my sister lived on Vancouver Island, and my mom and dad did for quite a number of years. So I can remember going to the Tsawwassen ferry. Well, much like Vancouver expanding, now it has this brilliant Andreas Duany inspired community, along with another gentleman, Lou Oliver, who played a role in bringing that beautiful community to life.
Okay.
So
I think I'm going to have to go on an architecture tour around North America. Okay, how about Viridian in Ann Arbor, Michigan?
Okay, we can do that one next, since you mentioned it. It is an incredible community that is very committed to environmental stewardship.
Okay.
So they have solar panels standard on the roofs. They have battery backup standard for power outages. And it has been created by an environmental consultant who wanted to showcase what's possible.
Okay.
So he's worked with another Canadian, Jason F. McClellan, founder of the Living Future Institute and the Living Future Building Challenge. So Jason F. McClellan is very famous in the US for having worked on the Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle. So that arena and his work in a holistic, sustainable community design framework called the Living Building Challenge and the Living Future Challenge, they envision what would be possible if we could do not just less harm, but more good. Okay. What if housing could be viewed as a source for good? What if all homes could be net zero energy? What if the stormwater could be treated as we were discussing? So we're very interested in partnering with the Living Future Challenge and the Living Building Challenge to incorporate a lot of their ideas into the evolution of our community.
And do you see some changes coming in phase 3 in terms of solar and these battery options as generators or as power sources for homes?
And we're doing a community impact assessment right now with the Ontario Energy Board. And so we've submitted the next phase to the OEB and we're awaiting their response. And we're looking forward to them recognizing and realizing, as a lot of energy associations are across North America, that what do you know, people aren't plugging in their electric car during the day. They're plugging it in at night. And they're realizing that these homes are not doubling the energy requirement when we get rid of natural gas. Rather, they're cutting the existing electrical requirement of a home literally sometimes in half.
Okay.
Just because even without solar...
Just by virtue of how efficient they are.
Yes, and these net zero energy homes are just so vastly different with the super insulation, the super tight building envelope, and the super ventilation, so that the energy loads that they were anticipating, what they're realizing, and the assessor for Rideau St. Lawrence, RSLD, Rideau St. Lawrence Distribution, yes, RSLD, what their engineer has found is, the OEB should easily allow each of those homes to be solar powered, because then it is giving everyone energy independence and energy resilience if they want to opt for the battery.
Okay.
And we think that's going to become much more common. And that's why we really envision Mark Carney being here someday, and Doug Ford with their ministers of housing, their ministers of energy, their ministries of transportation, and their environment ministers. Because again, they've done this in the US in the past. They've had all of those energy ministries, and they've said, yes, this is the way we need to plan not just the homes, but this is the way walkable communities can eliminate the need of an automobile or a second automobile for many people. They would still need one, more than likely, but it could be a car share. And so Viridian is an incredible community.
Is that one. All right, let's go south to South Carolina, and you've got Hartness.
Yes, Hartness is a community created by, I'm not sure of the family's name, but I became introduced to it through a urbanist and draftsperson, Lou Oliver in Atlanta. And through a mutual friend, I've gotten to know the work of Lou Oliver. And so he has a design pattern guideline, much like they do with Andreas Duani with some of his communities. And the design pattern guideline for Hartness just shows such what I call meticulous attention to detail. And he is such an incredible draftsman. He has really got such a wonderful, wonderful eye for that meticulous attention to detail with all sorts of architecture and land planning that we hope to incorporate in future phases.
Well, I think we've done a lot of amazing architectural details on our homes already. When you drive through the community and you see the color variation, the patterns, the choices that people can make even with the same home as their neighbor, but it looks like a different home. And that is intentional, I know, on your part. And we don't have that cookie cutter feel at all at Watercolour.
No, we don't. And Lou, because of his experience working with Andreas Duani at some of these hundreds of communities that they've brought to life, I just feel wholly inadequate to bring future commercial to Westport. And that's the missing link that I think a gentleman like Lou Oliver would bring to the table, is that eventually, you know, as the core of Westport is built out, you know, in 10 or 15 or 20 years, you need someone like a Lou Oliver helping you with your land plan so that it's a walkable land plan. It's not more commercial mall that is inapplicable to a rural environment. So in Clarksville, Georgia, he's put together a preservation plan for Clarksville to make sure it doesn't get overrun with urban sprawl. And that's why we look forward to the day when we can partner with Lou to make sure that Westport doesn't get overrun with anything inappropriate to a rural village. So there won't be any big box stores here ever in my lifetime. I would not want to be a part of bringing that to life, and nor would any Westportian.
So Lou Oliver, if you're listening, you're going to get an invitation to come to Watercolour. All right. Tell me about Seabrook, Washington.
Oh,
Because that's a community that started out of nothing in the middle of nowhere.
correct.
Didn't have a village, didn't have, yeah, a lot of the things that we have here in watercolor that are just ready to be enjoyed.
And that's why it's so inspiring to me that Robert Davis, the founder of Seaside, Florida, 40 years ago, with 80 acres, could create a village in the middle of nowhere. And then 20 years ago, Casey Roloff, inspired by Seaside, called his community Sea Brook, because it had two brooks running down his 54 acres, I believe. And so now there's about 500 homes, 25 homes a year. And 20 years later, they've created a walkable, compact community, but they've had to subsidize a lot of the restaurants and the shops. And I think, well, if they can do it, we can do it here because we already have all the shops.
Oh, we have amazing shops.
And we have all that retail and we have all that commercial, and there's 87 businesses at least listed on the Westport tourism information map. But it is an incredible community that inspires me because he hired a landscape designer and a landscape planner and an urban planner to help him bring that New England variety of architecture, those brightly colored homes to life without marring the land plan and preserving those places that need to be preserved and putting the density of about 5 units an acre, 10 units an acre where you need to put density so it feels alive. And it's this idea of you activate space. And that means you just have lively commercial centers where you want lively commercial centers. And it slowly rolls out historically, just like the Glebe or places in Toronto like the Beaches. And it's an incredible task that Casey Roloff and his wife Laura, we hope to interview them on the show and have them share some of the secrets to their success.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, we're almost rounding it out here and going to get done, but Trilith.
And then we have to come back to Carlton Landing, and so I don't forget to mention.
Yes.
But Trilith, the Chick-fil-A family, Truett Cathy and Dan Cathy. We also hope to interview Dan Cathy. He's the founder, or the founder of Trilith. And it started as something called Pinewood Studios, as I understand it anyways, from my limited amount of information. And it was meant to be a place where films could be produced, like Pinewood Studios in London, England, or somewhere in England. And we know about Hollywood. Well, they wanted to make sort of a Hollywood East and South. So Pinewood Studios, through their British connection, they had a film lot, and to diversify the Chick-fil-A family foundation into going back to their roots in Fayetteville, Georgia, they wanted to bring economic sustainability to that area. And so it was going to be a workforce housing community for Pinewood Studios. And they partnered with Lou Oliver. He was the land planner and urbanist who was chosen. And though I have walked that community so many times, and I feel the same things I felt when I was in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Beauty, beauty, beauty. Beauty always wins. And that community is so drop dead, unbelievably beautiful because it's going back to historic landforms of 30 by 60 foot lots, 40 by 80 foot lots that we don't hear a lot about. And they take that extra space in the backyards and they landscape these beautiful walking trails. And so then they preserved about half their land with all the trees and all the stream corridors. But then where they did put on there, I believe, 220 acres of land, they only developed about 110 of it. And it is meant to be a backdrop for movies so that actors and actresses can be seen. And they call that above the line, the people you might see as actors or actresses. But then you need this whole workforce housing who are the hundreds and hundreds of people behind the scenes who make the movies. And so that workforce housing started off with Pinewood Studios, but unfortunately it was so beautiful and it became so desirable. They had a guild of builders and the Chick-fil-A family were doing the land development. So they were doing around 50 home sites a year.
Are they smaller footprint homes?
They are, and they're incredibly beautiful, with Lou Oliver designing them to make it, out of their 20 odd plans, they can give them a different external elevation, one of many, many phases, so that the communities will look Roman, some might look Greek, some might look like little English hamlets that I'm so fond of. And he is Lou and the Truitt family. It's just an incredible experience to walk through and just imagine a different quality of life.
Yeah. And last but not least, you wanted to circle back to Carleton.
Carleton Landing.
Not in Carleton Place, Ontario. Carleton Landing is in? Let's think about
Lake Eufaula, I believe is how you pronounce it, between Oklahoma and Dallas. So they call themselves sort of Seaside West, I believe it is. And I got to remember my American geography right now, but Grant Humphreys has been the president of the New Town Builder Association, NTBA. So that's where we've learned also a lot about the art of town building. So Grant Humphreys was the former president of, or executive director or CEO or whatever you want to call it, for these guys building towns from scratch. And so his family had some cottage country property that they were in love with, and beautiful views, beautiful waterfront, and beautiful homes designed by, more than likely, Lou Oliver and Andreas Dwani. And just that variety of homes and housing styles, so that all different ages and stages of families can coexist.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all of that. For our followers and guests today, you can find all this information on our website. We have an amazing page built with inspirations, and you can circle or scroll and discover for yourself some of the details that Stephen has talked about and research more. But really, we want to invite you. Come and experience watercolor. Walk through. Maybe you will find that better place to call home that you're looking for. Phase 3 will be launching soon, and you'll hear more from us about a grand opening, and we will have just new possibilities of homes. Stephen, I know, is working diligently with our land planners to bring a lot of these features together so that we can experience a better way of life here in Westport and in watercolor. So thanks for joining us. Share the podcast episode, follow us, and we'll talk to you again soon.